Well, winter is certainly upon us here in the Southern Hemisphere, and there is snow on the Alps. If that appeals to you, then I would thoroughly encourage you to head across to the siteshed.com/events and check out the program we're running called Learn and Ski. In August this year, we'll be taking a group of business owners over to the lovely Wanaka in New Zealand, where we will be partaking in a ski workshop. We will be skiing in the mornings, and then we will be workshopping in the afternoons, and then in the evenings we will no doubt be checking out the bars and restaurants of Wanaka in New Zealand. It's a beautiful spot and there's some great mountains there, so if that's something that appeals to you, come along. It's basically a tax-deductible trip, and I've put that together because I want to help you guys find a way that you can take a bit of time out, get along, invest in yourselves, invest in your business, and learn some cool stuff that you can implement into your company while you also get a few runs in on the hill. So it's going to be a load of fun. There's a bunch of really cool people coming along. If it sounds like something you want to do, head across to the siteshed.com/events. Hello listeners, and welcome back to Toolbox Talks. My name is Matt Jones. Now tell me something, have you guys ever worked in a family business, or are you currently working in a family business? And not necessarily being one of the family members, however, being working in a organisation that is made up of a lot of relatives. They always have their challenges, and they have challenges both internally and externally. And in this episode, I'm joined by Al Levi from Appleseed Business. And Al has been on the show a number of times. However, in this instance, I thought it'd be really cool to cover off on a series that is talking about family and family organisations. And this series name is Why Most Family Businesses Don't Work and How the 7-Power Contractor Approach Can Help. We've broken it down into 3 different episodes. Episode 1, we're talking about planning power and building a flat organisational chart into your company. And then we're talking in this following episode about operating power, how you can define in writing what goes on, within those organizational chart categories. And then the final episode, we're talking about leadership, and we're talking about why leadership is so important in steering that ship to where it needs to go. So this is a cracking series. Once again, Al Levi has gone above and beyond in delivering amazing content. He really is an incredible communicator. And he's also offered a call to action, which will be on the show notes, where you can receive a sample of his book. And of course, that will have then a link to the actual book if you want to continue reading. But I thoroughly encourage you all to check that out. Anyway, that's all from me. Let's dive right in.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello and welcome back to Toolbox Talks. My name is Matt Jones, and thank you once again for sharing your earbuds with us wherever you are in this world. I'm joined today by Al Levi again from Appleseed Business, and we're doing another series on why most family businesses don't work and how the 7-Power Contractor Approach can assist. Al, thank you so much for coming back and giving us some more of your amazing knowledge on these topics.
I like always hearing you give me that intro, so that's why I show up. I'll follow you anywhere.
For the listeners out there that missed some of our previous podcasts, I was joined with Al back in episode 46 of Toolbox Talks, and that was just a bit about getting to know Al, and I encourage you to go back there and check that out. Al's an accomplished author of a book called The 7-Power Contractor, and Al comes from a trade background himself, and he certainly spent his time in the trenches, and now he runs an amazing, consulting business where he helps other people implement the similar systems and processes that helped him get to where he was in that business. More recently, we've just also completed a series which we call Powering Your Business with a 7-Power Contractor Approach, and that was an absolute corker. Go back and check that out. That was episode 56, 57, and 58. And in this episode, obviously, we're going to be talking more about family. And I suppose, Al, I wanted to initially, before we dive into this, obviously we had this conversation over the phone and we figured it was a really good topic. I know a lot of companies located here in Australia that are family-based organisations, in the sense that it's, more often than not somebody's son taking over their business or learning the ropes, or, they're sort of trying to carry it on through generations. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Yeah. I'd say for me in particular, it's a sensitive interesting because my business is the epitome of a family business.
Mm-hmm.
It was started with my grandfather out of a gas station in 1936. My dad took over and grew the business with my uncle. And then my brothers and I arrived, and we took it to the next thing, expanded into plumbing and heating, even more cooling. And since I've left 15 years ago to do my consulting business, my two brothers are still there, and my nephew, the fourth generation, is in the business, along with one of my brother's son-in-laws, and they now do electrical and home automation. So it's always exciting. It's always growing when you do it right. But family business can also be landmine, and it can be imprisoning. So when I do consulting and I talk in seminars and webinars with people, the family business is deep to my heart because I came in, and being the youngest of the brothers, my brothers made it clear to my dad, he's not getting anything unless he earns his way here. I didn't like it, but I totally understood what they were saying because, you can't walk into the business, or at least it wasn't right until you've earned it.
Yeah.
And my dad was brilliant about that in family business, which was don't ever ask anybody to do anything you haven't done yourself.
Yeah.
And that means don't ask somebody else to put their head in the toilet if you're not willing to do it or haven't.
Yeah.
Or climb up on a roof on a freezing cold day to go fix the heating unit up on the roof.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going up, you're coming with me. And that's kind of the mantra of our family business. Unfortunately, Matt, I just see so many businesses where they build great businesses, and then a family member comes in entitled. They don't have to play by the same rules, and it just totally undermines everybody that's there. But if you can get good young infusion of a family, and they're brought on the right way, and they're trained the right way, and there's ways that they fit in, and they've done their time and rise up and earn their way to the top, and they feel good at it, it's just amazing when the next generation, because there's so few businesses that are really successful at moving it from generations to generation, because there's some key things that I'd like to highlight as we step into this. So you as listeners, let me know if this resonates with you, which is you as the existing owners can never stop working. So that means whatever you're feeling at 30 years old today in your knees and your back and your wrists, imagine what it's going to feel like at 40, 50, 60, 70. You can never do it because you've got to support the family, and there's just this never-ending process. That's a problem. And when you bring family on, how are they going to fit into this business? Ellen Moore, I'm speaking about, has a good example of this, Matt, which is in America, there's a farm. And you as the dad has 4 kids. And now you divide the farm into a big acreage by 4. Now everybody's got a little farm. And then they have kids, and you keep dividing it, and you follow how this scenario goes wrong. Instead of having systematic ways to farm, add more farms so that they can go out and grow. And that's really where this thing gets sabotaged. So we've got a small business. It can never stop working because you're not growing in any direction. That's an issue. The other thing is, so the owner's succession plan is, I'm your dad, Matt's my kid. Hey, Matt, I need so much money to retire on. You need a job. Here's what it's going to cost for you to do. So write me a check every month for this much money. Mm-hmm. And I've now turned my son into, I've turned my kids. And by the way, also daughters. Yeah. There are more and more women, thankfully, coming into our industry in contracting, which I think is a great career.
Absolutely.
So selling it to your kids, the ball and chain on the next generation is a giant problem. Or you, Al, dad, Matt, the kid, is I just shoot too low a price, give it to you with no objective benchmarks about how you, Matt, can run this company, how you can fund whatever it is. And then you mess it all up, and I have to come back now at 50, 60, 70 years old and get this company back up, or we're both got a problem.
Yeah.
So there never was a good handoff. There's no systematic ways to running the company, all things that are going to be a problem. That's the reason why I'm thinking you guys should be listening to what Matt and I are going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and I see it all the time. I'm sure I'm not alone. You know, people that are the next generation going to take over a business, and they're just completely screwing it up, or they're just doing it. You know, it's not. I don't know whether it's ego or it's their own expectation on what what's rightfully theirs, inverted commas. And at the end, it's destructive at the end of the day. Like it leads to, I suppose, one of the biggest things that I have seen personally is the the amount of morale that can be lost due to that sort of scenario being implemented incorrectly. So I'm hoping we can potentially address some of those issues.
Yes, I know how to do it right, and I know how to address what's doing wrong. But ultimately, you're going to have to make that decision, and it's tough.
Yeah.
But it all can be. And here's my reward for you. If you do it right, you can actually go to the family parties and get-togethers and actually enjoy sharing a beer with your brother and sister.
Get out.
Instead of wanting to fly away from them. Yeah, right. So that's our goal here. That's the goal for what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay, cool. Well, look, we've broken this down into 3 episodes. Do you want to maybe just touch on, I suppose, what these episodes are and why you've chosen to break it down into these, please, Al?
Yeah, so based on using the 7 Power Contractor system, 7 systems again, which is planning, operations, staffing, sales coaching, marketing, finance. Planning Power has many facets to it. Think of it as a diamond. Building a flat organizational chart, which is the boxes it takes to run your company, is critical at any time for any company. But it's only 1,000,000 times more critical for a family organization. Because I'm going to share a couple of stories here about that. So I'll come back to why getting a family-run business to run right is really about planning power. And in particular, we're going to spend some time talking about why you want a flat organizational chart and what does that mean and what does that do for a family. So that's something I want to come back to. In our other series, I want to talk about operating power, which is Matt was talking about the kid that comes in the business that really, just either is entitled or screws it up, or, can't do it right. And sometimes it's not the kid's fault. The business was not constructed correctly. In other words, there aren't defined ways that we do business. It's all in the owner's head, whoever that is, and does a bad job of somehow giving the kid sitting at his knee to try to learn this stuff. So if you have defined what goes on in your business, what goes on in those boxes within the org chart in a way that's objective, it allows family members to get into the business, to fit in, know where they work right, work well, and they can be more productive in those positions. And then they can actually help us go and grow. Mm-hmm. That's what operating power as applies to this particular situation is why we're going to want to spend time on that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is what I call leadership power, which is actually the bonus power. So people always go, when I do leadership power, Matt, with people, they go, "Oh, this is great. I love leadership. Why didn't we start with that?" I said, well, I came to your company, Matt. The house is on fire. Your building's on fire. Now is not the time for me to be figuring out your manuals and procedures. Now's the time to grab a fire extinguisher and put the fire out. And so the other analogy, I would come across Matt. He's in this giant Olympic-sized pool, and he's splashing around in the pool on the verge of drowning. This would not be a good time to teach Matt how to swim. When I arrive, it's time to get Matt to the side of the pool, out of the pool, and then when we do everything else, we'll teach him how to swim, and then we'll set goals about how many laps he can do and if he wants to become an Olympic swimmer. So leadership power.
Good analogy.
It sounds weird, but leadership power is really the last thing I do. Yeah. Because this is now when we're really going.
Awesome. Well, look, with that in mind, why don't we just dive straight into episode 1, which is going to be planning power and building that flat organizational chart. So, okay, where do we start with this? Who are we speaking to here? Like, what is this directed at? The owners of the companies?
Well, I'm going to start. Yeah, I'm going to start right at the beginning, Matt.
Yeah. Which
at this point, hopefully, listeners know is I'm going to start with a story, and a really personal story, which was at my contracting business. I was the guy who would arrive late, in that I would show up at my business and be at the desk at about 6:35 a.m., which I hope is early to you guys. So 6:35, imagine it being late. My brother Marty's already been at work since 6 a.m., and he's answered calls from aggravated customers and all of this other stuff. And he's had to hear people yelling at him from whatever went wrong the night before or whatever's going on. Now, he's the financial kind of guy, and he's also the office manager. And he walks into the service department and starts screaming at the service manager and just ripping him apart. And now I walk in and I have to deal with this service manager who's on the edge of the roof getting ready to dive off. Okay. I'll give you the other scenario. I am at the phone, and one of the things my dad raised us on is we always pay our bills on time. We race to the mailbox to get our check in. Now, of course, we do electronic payment. Because when push comes to shove, the way you take care of your vendors is the way they'll take care of you when you need to be done. A golden rule, if you will. So I get a phone call one day from one of my vendors asking about, a bill that's past due. And I hang up the phone. I walk over to the bookkeeper, and I just start ripping into him about, what he is and what he isn't, and his whole family and the horse he rode in on. And I'm really just lighting up into him. And now Marty has to deal with him for the rest of the day as the account payable bookkeeper is up on the roof ready to jump. And we were just doing this whipsawing because of this family structure, which didn't exist.
Right.
We just didn't have an organizational chart. So everybody was a free for all. And it was very disheartening to a company because the bookkeeper didn't know, well, who am I serving here? You, Al, is in charge of the service department. Marty, who seems to be my boss, is the office manager. And the service manager didn't know, Al, I thought I was working with you, but Marty comes in here. So where is this? And so on a bad day, I'm getting yelled at by everybody.
Yeah.
Not a fun place to come to work. So
I must admit that's something that I hadn't yet considered is the scenarios where you've got more than one family member from a sibling perspective working together. That's now we're talking gloves off. Carry on. Sorry.
Yes, and I had to work with my dad too. So we had generations, not just
help me
across the line brothers and siblings. Yeah, so we had it all going. We were deep dish on all of this stuff. Yeah, we went full out. So shared a couple of stories here. I think it's important as we move to the how do you get this fixed. So at the end of this, Marty and I just went into a room and go, okay, this just doesn't work. Here's what I'm going to think is, Marty, if there's a service problem, you're not liking the way it is, you come see me and I will get it taken care of. And if I don't like the way the bills are paying, I'm coming to you and you get it straightened out. And I mean, it was a finger pointing, yell and scream at each other, but it was really a great meeting because we finally realized what we're doing. And you can't believe how much that improved not only culture, but productivity and everything else. Because when something got messed up, we got to the source of it. We knew who was responsible, and accountability is always important. It's 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times more important in a family business about where do I fit? Mm-hmm. And so that leads to this thing about what does it take to run a good company, especially a family business? How do you bring on family members and how do we do it right? And the thing about planning power is part of that is to create a flat organizational chart. And whether I keep saying flat is, no matter how big your company is, if I have to go through 20 manager levels to reach the boss gets isolated. They never really know what's going on. One of the shows I hate, which I don't know if it's syndicated by you, is called Undercover Boss. Have you ever heard of that show?
I haven't, but I'm not the person to talk to about television.
Okay,
probably because I don't own one.
It's a big company, and they don't even know who the boss. They don't know who the boss is because he puts on a mustache. Well,
I have seen this. I've seen this on. I've seen this on YouTube. Yeah, it was okay. Carry on.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it's a pretty sad statement, but that's the reality of why I don't believe in multiple levels. And I don't care if Matt is the vice president and I'm the president and treasurer. That's not what we're talking about. In a contracting business, there's the owners. Then there's a line below it, which is a warehouse manager, office manager. There's a marketing manager. If you have a service division, there's a service manager. In the install division, there's a sales manager who's responsible of the sales for big tickets, and also the install department with an install manager, and then a fleet manager. That's pretty much it. And then there's a series of boxes that are beneath that for apprentices, junior techs, senior techs, field supervisors. For salespeople, there are the system engineers that sell big tickets. And on the other side, there's installers, apprentice installers, senior installers, field supervisor installers, if your company's big enough. Mm-hmm. And under the office manager, there's accounts receivable, accounts payable, HR. So there are boxes it takes to run any company. And I say any company, Matt, meaning If you are a owner-operated company, guess what? The chart I just said applies to you.
So what are those categories again, Al? Just to recap.
Your name is in every box.
What are the categories that
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did. I heard it, and the reason I'm laughing is because I it's very familiar to me. Actually, I've had a similar business structure implementation strategy within my own companies, and my name was in probably a few too many of those boxes too. But anyway, what are those categories? Just once again for the listeners.
Yeah, so if you can envision this, there's the owner's box at the top, and then there's a line down, and then a straight line across, and then there are so think of it left to right as there's the warehouse manager, there's an office manager, there is a service manager in charge of the service department, there is a sales manager that has two components, which is the people who sell the big jobs, a whole bathroom remodel, a whole heating or cooling system, complete electrical thing. And then he is also in charge, the sales manager or she, in charge of the install wing that the big tickets were sold. Now they got installed, and there's everybody in that wing. And then the last wing is fleet manager.
Okay.
That's the basic rudimental organizational flat chart that we're talking about, of which let me make a note because I do want to share that. We'll talk about that. So the flat organizational chart is what I was saying is, you are owner-operator. There's times that you have a little warehouse. You still got to go back there. Somebody's paying the bill, probably you. You are the service manager. They call you up, and then you put on your glasses, and you go out with your toolbox. You became the service tech. You go out to a job, and you see something needs to be done. You give a price. You go out to your truck, go into the shop, order it up, install it. Guess what? You fit that box. And then the last thing really is kind of the warehouse. So this is the structure. So when people go, oh, man, I can't believe how many boxes my name is in, I say the following is, guess what, Matt? You were in those boxes. You just didn't know.
Yeah.
I have just given you the greatest power I can give you, because once you know the boxes you are in and what goes on in each of those boxes, which we're going to get into operating power in the next episode. But once you know what those boxes are and what goes on in each of those boxes, it is the only way you, Matt, can ever hand it off to anybody else. So if I was to come and help you take away some of those boxes in a good way, I could never occupy that box, Matt, unless you have documented what goes on in that box.
Right.
Is this making sense to
absolutely.
you?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
So why is this coming back to the family business? Because up till that day that I was talking about, me and Marty, we didn't know the boxes it took to run the company, and we absolutely didn't know who was in those boxes and who should be in those boxes and what goes on in those boxes. But once we did, life for all of us, starting with customers, then the company, and for the staff, and finally for us as owners, automatically got better, which is why I always go back to my tagline, less stress, more success. And the root to that was this flat organizational chart where you don't have to go through 20 levels, but it's also the organizational chart based on our last seminar. The last thing we were talking about was that it's putting the rubber to the road. When you say, you know what, Matt, you said your company offers careers, not jobs. Well, these rungs on this organizational flat chart, if I fill the box that I'm in today near the bottom, I automatically earn the opportunity when it becomes available to go for the next higher box, which means more responsibility, a raise in pay. I get to hold. At my company, the more chapters of the manual that you held, the more powerful you were, the more things you could do, the more you were moving ahead. So that's why operating power ties to this. But sticking with planning power for a minute. So Matt is my kid, comes into the business. I'm going to start him not as office manager. He's going to start as AR, AP, how to do QuickBooks, how to do the chart of accounts, all of that stuff. And he's going to earn his way to office manager. If he's going to be working in the service division, or part of his overall global training, he's going to start working as an apprentice, a junior tech, working his way up, so that by the time he gets to that service manager box, he can do the three most important things a service manager does. He improves the communication and sales skills of his staff. He improves the operational ability of that staff and their technical skills, sales, operation, technical. So now Matt, my son, has earned his way through the business. My dad had a great line about this. By the way, I didn't like the line when he told me, but when I arrived into the company, not as a helper, but when I arrived, and once my brothers had said, he's got to be here a while before he gets some ownership, my dad said, all I owe you is an opportunity, not a guarantee. So let me say that one again, which is, as an owner or as a dad, and you're helping someone come into the business the right way, is that you need to explain to those people coming into the business, you owe them an opportunity, not a guarantee. Because that's the best way for them to not come in entitled and to feel when they finally get to the top box, they have earned it. A lot of times when you see that incompetent thing you were talking about, Matt, the kid coming to the business, a lot of it is because they understand intuitively that they have gotten that top box but not earned it. And there's a guilt that's attached to it. Sounds weird, right? Not trying to get to be a psychologist, but it's true. They know it, and they don't want to be that. But what it is if you can let them, start where they need to start, and it doesn't mean they have to be that for 100 years. You just have to understand what it takes to these boxes that you're quote unquote going to be managing. A lot of people ask me all the time, so what are the managers going to do? What are the managers going to do? When I first arrived, I said nothing. Yeah. Until we get the bottom of this all fixed, which is the manager's job is to hold people accountable to their manuals. And if you're an owner and you have family coming into business and we're working together as, in my case, two older brothers and a dad, once we knew what was going on in that flat organizational chart and what it was, I had earned the right to go to Marty as, why aren't the bills getting paid on time? Yeah. Why am I getting these calls? And what are you going to do about it? And he earned the right to come to me and goes, we're getting too many repeat calls. I have to field these angry calls from people in the morning. What are you, Al, going to do about it? And it was really, really super important that we did that. I will say share another thought here about the power of an org chart as it relates to a family. So to try to go back in time here, when I was 20 and 30 years old, my brothers and I were competitive, which I don't think that's a surprise, right? Three brothers, we love each other, but we're competitive now. And so my dad now, is watching this. We're spending as much time micromanaging each other as we're actually doing work, and a lot of bickering. And my dad one day just brings us in the office, closes the door, and says the following. Here's how I look at it. If all of us get on the same side of the car and push, this car is going to go really fast in the direction we want. Because the way you're acting today is anything but being on the same side of the car. That was the astounding. My dad was really quiet, rarely ever raised his voice, but it was brilliant wisdom in that moment. And the three of us looked at each other and go, wow, yeah, we do that. Okay, let's stop that. And so with the org chart, we kind of looked at what we did. So here's a good example. Insurance was super critical at our business because we were running so many vehicles, trucks. There were high things that were cost of, and guys who work with workman's comp and certificate of liability. And, look, insurance is a monster part of our businesses. So here's what would go on because there was no org chart. Al would go out and get 3 bids for insurance. My brother Richie would go out and get 3 bids for insurance. Yeah. And Marty would go out and get 3 bids for insurance. Are you seeing the insanity and the waste of time and productivity here? Mm-hmm. Because until that moment where we had an org chart and we go, it's Marty's job to go out and get that as the financial manager, which is really even above the office manager. Financial manager is in charge. The financial manager is really in charge of doing that. So here's what it was. Marty would go out, get 3 bids, and make a presentation to Richie and myself as to what's the pros and cons to these 3. And as a group, we made our decision. Yeah. And that was just one example of how an organizational chart and agreeing to maximize our time and learning how to work together and hold each other accountable. And it took place by what I'm driving back home is this organizational chart, planning it better, bringing people into your business, especially family members, especially generational stuff, where there's a plan. So the next level of this, Matt, is what I call a depth chart, DEPTH, depth chart. So in American football, we have the center, and the center hikes the ball until he hikes the ball to the quarterback. Nothing happens. So I don't know the Aussie rugby football, but I'm sure there's something that some way initiates play, right? Who's the guy who starts the whole action?
Yeah, well, it's normally the halfback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the halfback gets hurt. What should we do? Stop playing? The question, of course, is no. On the depth chart, there's a number 2 guy who gets in there and plays halfback, right?
Right.
Same idea here. So the next level so once you've got the boxes and once you have the names, and if there are more than just you at work, then it becomes a matter, can you cross-train? So when Marty is on vacation, automatically one of us would slide into that financial manager role and nothing would get lost.
Mm-hmm.
If I was on vacation, service manager, there was either somebody below me, a field supervisor, or my brother could slide in, Richie, and act in that role. So when you create the goal of any good company is not only to have a flat organizational chart, not only knowing what goes on in those boxes, but now you get onto the really very neat stuff, which is, can you create depth at each of those positions? Because if you can go and grow as big as you want. And when this person is out, it's not a problem. The next person slides right in and can manage because somebody's going on vacation for a good reason. Somebody retires for a good reason. Somebody got promoted a good reason. These are all great things that the power of a flat organizational chart can drift right into the depth chart. And these are some of the most powerful tools in your planning power toolbox, is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, no, this is really amazing. I suppose my question would be, when you're a small company and you're starting out, and I'm sure there's a lot of our listeners out there that are relating to what I'm about to say here. I mean, you've already mentioned, your name may be the one present in all those boxes. Is this more applicable, this structure more applicable to a company that is already established, or is it better to build it when you are in that initial stage and grow it from there?
The answer would be yes and yes, which means both.
Yeah.
You will always be a prisoner of one single owner-operator business if you're relating to that.
Yeah.
Until the day you create this organizational chart, until you understand the boxes it takes to run your company. And when you are doing those jobs, what exactly are you doing? Because until you document it, your son, your daughter, whoever that is, can never come on board and take any of those boxes away from you, ever. They can get boxes thrown at them, but you're never getting out of that box, and they can never come and help you get into that box and ultimately run your company and take it to the next level and keep this thing going without it. Now, if you are a big company and you've grown out exponentially in a wild basis, which was what we had done, this is allowing you to put a great foundation under your company by starting to restore order, by getting this flat organizational chart out there, defining what's going on in it, and then starting putting names to it, and then starting to build the training that allows that cross-training. And when you bring a new family member on, they know where they start, they know how long they're going to be there, they know what they have to do to keep earning their way up and getting to take over. So when the day comes, it's clearly, and we're going to talk more about how to do this, evaluate the business, because there are some pitfalls. And that's some things we have to talk about when businesses go south.
Yeah, cool.
One of the things, we're talking about the org chart right here now, but imagine there are 3 brothers and a dad, and 4 people have 4 different visions of this company.
Yeah.
So we're going in 4 different directions. We're really busy every day, but we're headed off in 4 different directions. Think of a compass, north, south, east, west, right?
Yeah.
And so the planning power and getting on to organizing and having it there, what is your master project? Some stuff we talked about before, top 30, top 5. It allows a family to come together, crystallize, and present. So think of it, when you were a kid, if you didn't like the answer your mom gave you to whatever you wanted to do, what was your next step?
Dad,
Yeah, exactly right. Because mom and dad didn't talk, and so like mom said it was okay if you said okay, dad it's okay. So people at work are no different. And I don't care that they're 30, 40, 50, or 60 years old. They're still going to do the same thing. So if the 4 owners or the 2 owners or the 1 owner are not clear, this is going to happen, and especially as you bring family in. So planning power and having that master project, top 30, top 5, which automatically hones the family into, yep, this is where we're going, this is where we're growing. There's one goal, one direction, and when we get lost, the compass is this. And if you're coming in, you, Matt, are going to prove your worth because you're going to earn one of those projects, and you're going to prove to me you can bring it in on time and right. Because if you can, there's a future for you. This is what we're saying, the opportunity, not a guarantee.
Awesome.
Do you see how this can work really well for families?
Absolutely. So I suppose, look, getting to close, wrapping up this episode now, a couple of the takeaways for me would be, firstly, implement that org chart within your business, and regardless of what level you are, just get it in there. And even if it's your name across every part of it at this point, that's fine, but just get something happening. And then the other takeaway for me was probably the one where you mentioned, if you're going to bring family into the business, they have to earn their way into position. Don't just give them anything, because firstly, it will create disharmony within your organisation, like your other staff members, and then of course they're not going to be they're not going to have the skill. They're not going to be able to run the business the way it needs to be run. So,
yeah, I think that you're right on target with both. Great summary.
All right, cool. Was there anything you wanted to add to that episode, Al?
No, I think that's really kind of it. Here's what I'm going to say is, family businesses can be phenomenal. There is no more rewarding experience or no greater misery. And the only thing is, to you, which way do you want it to go? Because if you want it to be great, it can be. But you're going to have to put these tools in your toolbox. And this one that we're talking about, planning power, starting off with the org chart and leading into these other things, it's going to make the family business run better. And if you do like what Matt just recapped there, which is bring people on, help the family member understand the expectations of where they fit in and how they can go and how they can grow. And there's a transition in the future here. Instead of trying to divide up the family farm, we're going to grow the farm bigger and bigger. It's exciting.
So if you haven't already, head across to thesiteshed.com and register for our Toolbox Talks, where you'll be regularly sent great episodes just like this straight to your inbox, so you'll never miss one. If you want to join the community, you can head across to thesiteshed.com/members, where for a small monthly fee, you'll get access to regularly updated training material, as well as access to our forum, where you can mingle and collaborate with trade-based business owners just like you from all over the world. If you're enjoying this podcast, please head across to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. We greatly appreciate it, and it helps us spread the word and reach the masses. Likewise, if you know anyone that might benefit from the content we create, then please go ahead and share this with them.
You've been listening to Toolbox Talks by The Site Shed. For more great content just like this, head across to thesiteshed.com and join the amazing community of savvy trade-based business owners.